Hey, this is John from Incantation, and you're watching RichardMetalFan. Hell yeah! Ah!
Hey, what's up, guys? Episode 74, 75 of RichardMetalFan interviews here at the Masquerade in Atlanta, Georgia, and I have a returning guest, my good buddy John McEntee from Incantation. How you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing awesome. It's great to be here again, out on the road. We just got back from Europe, so it's been like a whirlwind summer, metal assault. It's been a blast.
Hell yeah! I know you're currently on this awesome tour right now with Goat Whore, Bewitcher,
yeah.
and Caveman Colt. So how's the tour been going so far? Most typical interview question ever.
Well, so far it's been going good. We only played one show in Orlando last night. Is the first show of the tour, and Goat Whore broke down, so I didn't play the show. So besides the fact not having Goat Whore on the show, if you put that aside, everything went super great. The show was packed and a great vibe and everything, so it was great. All the bands were super cool too, It seems like it's going to be a fun tour,
Awesome. So what I want to do is a brief rundown of the catalog as well as like your journey as a musician from where you started out. But I'm always curious, before we go into that, what were the first bands that got you into metal? What made you want to start playing guitar?
The first band that got me really interested, diehard into music in general was Kiss in the 70s, because I'm old enough to be part of that kind of Kiss hysteria you hear about in history, So that really turned me on to music, and I just remember liking just harder edged stuff at that time. One thing I remember really liking was Foreigner's Hot Blooded song with that guitar.
Yeah.
At that time I thought it was heavy. I guess it is a pretty heavy riff for Foreigner. I got into music like Queen, and then started getting into like AC/DC, and kind of just, I was young. I was like 6, 7 years old, 8 years old when getting into that stuff. And by the time I became like a teenager is when I started venturing into more of the, Ozzy and Black Sabbath and Dio, the fundamentals of metal and stuff. But that was like really popular stuff at that time. It was all those bands were really heavy, I think, for that time period. And just all that stuff inspired me to want to play, because I just felt like I related to metal. It was like I was an outcast, pretty much my whole life. And once I found kind of like hard rock, heavy metal music as a kid, I kind of found my place, I was also a big like Dungeons and Dragons fan and stuff at that time, so I would play that too. But it was these kind of weird things that I was into that only like other outcasts were really into, it wasn't like all the trendy stuff that, I always felt like outcasts with the kids in school and stuff like that. It's kind of, I found my place in metal, and then, I guess for me, as far as for death metal, I really was influenced by Possessed a lot when I first heard Seven Churches.
The OGs.
Yeah, that, and like the early Slayer stuff, like Hell Awaits and stuff. Those things like kicked my ass, and kind of inspired me to want to, go heavier with music, and then, I just did my own part at a certain point. When I got confident enough as a writer, I played in my foreign band Revenant and went to start Incantation, because I had kind of my own vision of what I wanted to do, kind of thing.
And how did you get to know the guys in Incantation at the time? Because y'all formed in '89, I believe.
Yeah, well, I met Paul Ledney, which was our first drummer, and actually the one that came up with the name Incantation. Ross Dolan from Immolation, he knew that, I told him I wasn't happy in Revenant. I wanted to kind of move on and do something different. He kind of encouraged me to do so, if that was what was in my heart. And he brought up Paul Ledney, and I wasn't really familiar with him before that, but I met him and we realized we had a lot in common. He was really into bands like Sarcophago and like the Blasphemy demo, and bands like Necrovore and Necrophagia and early Morbid Angel, and we just kind of hit it off from there. And then the other guys that played us was with Aragon Amore, rest in peace. He was he was a friend of Paul's that played in another band called Toten with him and Bloodthirsty Dead. He was the bass player. He came along for Incantation, and then we had Brett Mikowski that I also met through Paul, and yeah, we just, even though Incantation at that time was really myself and Paul Ledney, the other guys, we just kind of had, I mean, they were great guys and cool dudes or whatever, but I think Paul Ledney wasn't really happy with, at least with Brett Mikowski at the time. He didn't think that he fit the band, but I liked Brett Mikowski. I thought he was a cool dude, a great guitar player, so I was happy to play with him.
Yeah, tell me about the first Incantation demo, which is called Enchantment of Evil. How did that whole thing come to be? Was that like something to like send out to labels and then until like Relapse got you?
Yeah, well, really, it was our demo. We did the 1990 demo, and what was it? We just did, yeah, I remember we just recorded our demo, and then Seraphic Decay Records was going to wanted to put out some of the songs on the demo on 7-inch, and we had 7 minutes of music, so on our demo, we had like one longer song and one shorter song each side, because we wanted to have 4 songs on the 7-inch, and we had problems with Seraphic Decay Records, didn't work out, and then Relapse ended up, I was jamming with Mortician at the time, and Matt Sitcher, the drummer from Mortician, told me about Relapse Records, who was putting out the Mortician 7-inch, and I contacted them and said, I'm having problems with this label, can we, maybe work with you guys to release our 7-inch, and to all of our surprise, once Relapse released the Entrapment Evil 7-inch, thing just sold like wildfire. I mean, it did so many pressings of it. It just, it was one of the building blocks for Relapse Records. It was like us, Mortician, Suffocation. I think we're like probably the 3 7-inches or early releases. I don't know if the Suffocation was on 7-inch. I think it might have just been on CD, but those were the ones that really, like, I think got Relapse notice. So it's kind of nice to be a part of that history,
Yeah, and wasn't that demo, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't it intended to be like a split with Amorphous, but then somehow you ended up each doing your own thing separately?
That was our
different?
second demo. That was the, a second 7-inch, Deliverance of Horrific Prophecies. We did 5 songs, if I remember. It was 5 or 6, I think 5. And yeah, we recorded those, and we heard the Amorphous side of the 7-inch, and man, we were just like, holy crap, the Amorphous sounds so good, and we thought we sucked on our side, so we were a little skeptical about, but we were still interested in doing it because we figured, it would be a good, strong, underground 7-inch, and, not 7-inch, I'm sorry, a split LP it was supposed to be, and, when Relapse went to the distributor to get it, in the stores back then, Relativity, I think it was the distributor. And they said they weren't going to let them release it. That they had to release it on 2 different EPs. And Amorphous ended up being the Privilege of Evil EP, and ours, we weren't happy with it, like I said. So we just took 2 of the songs and did the Deliverance Horrific Prophecy 7-inch. And then we re-recorded those songs for Onward to Golgotha later.
Yeah. And tell me about the debut. I think it's, in my opinion, one of the best metal debut albums ever. I put it up there with like Dawn of Possession, Even Back to Life, Altars of Madness. And I know this year is also the 30-year anniversary of the album. Is there like a chance we can get a celebration of that somehow? Maybe throw in some deep cuts in the set tonight?
Well, first of all, I'm happy that you like it that much. I mean, it's crazy because the reaction for that album when it came out was great, but these days the reaction is even better for it. I think people really see it as starting something special in death metal. And that was kind of the concept. We didn't want to start something special, we'll say, but we wanted to do something that was distinctively us and like kind of pushing the limits of death metal at that time. It's honor that we accomplished it. As far as playing deep cuts from it, we were playing a song from Onward to Golgotha on this tour, I don't know if it's considered a deep cut because all the songs on an album are really good, I think, and it's, we play most of them all the time. There's a few that we don't really play. We don't really play Unholy Massacre that much, and we haven't played Blasphemous Curation for a while, but most of the other songs we played within the last few years. But no, we're not doing anything special for it. It's not because we don't want to, it's just that we're so busy with the success of our current album that it's like, it's just not really top of mind. I mean, of course we appreciate the album, you know, it's an important part of our career, but we just, you know, at this point, and now we're more focused on moving forward. In the future, we plan on doing a tour of more of our retro stuff. We've already been talking about it because we want to, you know, we like the old stuff and we want to do that live, but a lot of these sets that we have, we only have an hour max, maybe a little more, even at a headlining set, and to fit new songs and old songs, and it's so difficult. It's almost like, I mean, I'm not comparing ourselves to Iron Maiden, but when you see Iron Maiden, sometimes they'll play...
Favorite band of mine.
Yeah, they're one of my favorites too. They'll play a modern set sometimes, and they'll play an old school set sometimes, and it's kind of a good concept to do, because, you know, it's great for the old school people, or the new school people, to see those classics played in a full set where it's based on that, you know? We're trying to kind of hopefully do something like that where we can go tour for the new album and fill it with, you know, say new songs plus a mixture of our history, and then maybe do another tour and do all stuff from, say, I don't know, the 90s era, you know, like Diabolical, Golgotha and Mortal Throne, do like all that kind of stuff at once. It would be fun to do anyway, because we like the songs. It's not like we don't like it. We
I gotcha.
Can't fit them in the set.
Yeah, and moving on to the next album, Mortal Throne of Nazarene, which AKA also Upon the Throne of the Apocalypse. That's a good follow-up album. Like usually with the debut, you have your entire life to write it. Did you feel like pressure to follow up on Word to a Golgotha, going to Mortal Throne of Nazarene / Upon the Throne of Apocalypse?
Yeah, I would say you're correct about that, because we had a whole album written. Well, I'd say about 80% of an album written, and we trashed it because it didn't have the inspiration. It was really, the I Want to Go Gotha thing was really a special time for the band, but it was also really strange because it's like we worked so hard to do that album, and then once we did that album, it was like the wind was out of our sails almost. Like the chemistry got somehow fucked up and lost. Like, I remember just being really frustrated because I was really hungry to write material and stuff and get the album, the next album done, you know, fairly soon. But it just seemed like the band was like kind of happy with just doing Onward to Golgotha and have it be a great album, and it wasn't like the urgency to get something else out. And me being a, you know, insane, you know, I'm insane when it comes to music. Like I have a fire that people really like at certain points, but other points they find it to be a real pain in the ass. I push so hard on stuff. But so I think the rest of the band wanted to take a break, and I wanted to push forward on it, and I was pushing maybe too hard to do it. And we wrote a bunch of songs, and we ended up trashing most of them. A few of them surfaced on Immortal Throne later, and a few other albums. I used some of the riffs, but what was it? The songs that we wrote for Mortal Throne were actually written after most of the Onward to Golgotha lineup broke up, and it was just myself and Craig Pillard. We wrote most of the Mortal Throne of Nazarene song together, and then we ended up, before the album, calling back Jim Rowe to ask him to play on the album. I mean, we wanted him to play on the album. You know, we love his drumming, but he wasn't happy in the band at the time, but he did it. I mean, he didn't do it as a favor for me. He did it a favor for Craig, I think, if anything. But he ended up being he did a great job on the album. But that album was also the most stressful album to ever do. Number one, because Golgotha did so good, and second of all, it's just, it was just stressful. The band was not in the same mindset as we were on Onward to Golgotha, and I really wanted to strike while the iron was hot with the band. You know, I'm like I said, I'm a very driven person, so that could work as a positive and negative sometimes in a band.
Yeah. Hello. We got an interrupted guy. Hey, get out! I'm doing an interview. That's gotta love Howie from last grade. Anyway, moving on to the EP, Forsaken Morning of the Angelic Anguish. Was that like something to like hold fans over while we wait for Diabolical Conquest?
I guess you could say that. I mean, I think the real way of looking at it was the Mortal Throne Nazarene, that time with Relapse and the Upon a Throne Apocalypse, that time with Relapse was a fucking mess. It was a total mess, and I was done with them at the time. I was just like, fuck them, you know, because they didn't believe in me in the band. They got to love the Onward to Golgotha lineup, but they didn't understand the inner issues that we had with the band. But they started to get kind of involved in some of the inner issues with the band, getting into personal matters, and I was really unhappy with it, and I wanted to get off them. So we actually had a deal. We got a deal with Repulse Records out of Spain. If we do this EP and Repulse gives them some free copies of the EP, Repulse could release the album, and we could be out of our contract with Relapse. And Repulse ended up fucking up the deal somehow, and Relapse ended up getting the rights to the album. So basically, Relapse took that EP from Repulse. And
Just be like, here you go.
Yes. And we ended up recording some extra tracks with Daniel Corchado, who was in the band, as bonus tracks for that album. And we were stuck back on Relapse again. But the thing was, which was actually a really fun little tidbit of information, is Bill Yurkevich, which is probably the most one involved in like a lot of the drama that we had at the time. He called me up after he heard the Forsaken Morning that Repulse pressed up, and he said, he was like, I really, really, really don't want to say this because it pisses me off, but I fucking love it.
Yeah.
He's like, I love that. I love the EP so much, and I really didn't want. I thought it was gonna suck, you know. And he apologized to me basically and said that, you know, he believes in me in the band. I proved myself to them, and that they wanted to work with us again. And we didn't have a choice in the matter anyway, because we were still under contract by them. So yeah, it was kind of a weird situation at that time.
And then of course, going into Diabolical Conquests and the Infernal Storm, I think those two albums kind of like go hand in hand with each other. Tell me about those albums.
Well, Diabolical Conquest, I mean, all the Diabolical Conquest and Forsaken Morning were all written in the same group of songs. Like, as soon as Mortal Throne was done with, the Mortal Throne of Nazarene lineup totally dissolved. It was just me. I went to Cleveland. We wrote a couple songs with Craig was still in the band, and we had John Brody from Deterior Rot playing drums. And we wrote the song Nocturnal Kingdom of Demonic Enlightenment back then. But then the band just fell apart. I moved to Cleveland to jam with Kyle. The first song I wrote with him was Diabolical Conquest. We wrote some of the Forsaken Morning songs. We had a whole bunch of songs out. We were living really close to each other. We were both really inspired. We were writing like crazy. And so yeah, it was all for kind of like both the Forsaken Morning and Diabolical are kind of connected albums in my opinion. And you know, once we got Daniel in the band, we were really happy with it. And you know, yeah, we just, you know, record those songs. I know Daniel was very insecure about his vocal contribution because he was so much different than Craig Pillard. But you know, we knew he was great, and you know, you don't have to be this last person in the band. You just have to be good in yourself, and that's how you make a good album. And because the music's gonna sound like Incantation, because I end up having a lot to do with the writing, or at least shaping of the way things are to some extent. So it's not like it's not gonna sound like Incantation. It's just gonna be a different way of, say, presenting it a little bit. And Daniel did an amazing job on the vocals on that album. I mean, I mean, when that album came out, the reaction was fucking amazing again. It was just as good, if not even maybe a little better than Onward to Golgotha as far as the response we got from it. It was like everybody was really happy when that album came out. It was just like, yes, the band's back on track, you know?
Yeah, and next up I want to talk about is Blasphemy. In my opinion, a very underrated album in your guys' discography. I know this year is also the 20th anniversary of that album.
That's crazy.
But man, what was like the mind frame going from Blasphemy?
Well, Blasphemy this was a time when death metal was really frowned upon in the music scene. Music was mostly symphonic, black metal was really popular, kind of like
Dimmu Borgir, because
yeah,
I know they're in
that, and then symphonic, like that operatic female vocal metal. I don't know what it's called.
Like symphonic metal, like Epica.
Yeah, something like
Great
that.
Great bands, by the way.
Yeah, those bands were really popular. There's a lot of new metal bands coming out. The point of the matter is that death metal was just not at a high at that point. I think people were just burnt out on it. So when we did Blasphemy, we just said we still love playing death metal. We're gonna just play a straightforward death metal album, not give in to the trends. This is our time to truly prove if we're doing this for the right reasons or not, because it's easy to do albums when your music style is trendy, but when it's not trendy, it's not easy to do because you spend a lot of time working on it and people just aren't going to give it the time of day. Like the reviews, people, weren't really reviewing it, or if they're reviewed it, they're like, oh, this is just like, boring death metal, blah, 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 but we were proud of the album. It's actually one of my favorite albums, and personally, I feel proud of the statement that Kyle and I made on that album, and Mike Sayers, as far as, we're going to do it our way. We don't care what the trends are. It has nothing to do with the fact if we like what's going on or not. It's that we're Incantation. We do it our way, and that's it.
Yeah, and I know according to Metal Archives, apparently there were outros on the album that were shots at Relapse. I don't know if you can elaborate on that.
No, I wouldn't say anything was negative towards Relapse. We were just happy not to be on Relapse. No, there was no, the fact that Relapse let us go after the Infernal Storm, freely, even though they could have held us there, we were happy to be gone with them. It wasn't, at that point, we weren't mad at Relapse, we weren't mad at Relapse in a spiteful way. We were just mad because we thought they were doing things the wrong way. They were promoting our stuff in the wrong routes. They were promoting our stuff to people that like bands like Dillinger Escape Plan and stuff like that. And a lot of those people were not interested in hearing, like the Infernal Storm was the last one we did on Relapse at that time. And they didn't want to hear a death metal album. They wanted to hear a more technical album. And it's like, if you're gonna put out a death metal album, you gotta promote it in the right places where death metal people are gonna, give it an honest opinion if they like it or not. People are just slagging it because they don't like death metal, and it's like, well, yeah, if you don't like death metal, of course you're not gonna like it.
Yeah. But going into Decimate Christendom, I think it's a really good album. It's also the first album where you took up vocal duties. Did you feel like nervous stepping up and being the front man?
Yes, I felt nervous as fuck. I mean, I had huge shoes to fill. I mean, Craig Pillard, an amazing vocalist. Daniel Crociato, amazing vocalist. We had Will Romer in the band, amazing vocalist.
Yeah.
We had, Mike Sayers, another great vocalist. So it's like, hell yeah. I was nervous as fuck. It took me a year of practicing in my basement to get to the point where I felt comfortable to do it. And basically all those vocals on that album were coached by Kyle and Bill Korecki in the studio, because I couldn't tell them if it was good or not, because I hated everything I did on the album. I hated at the time because I wasn't comfortable with it. I thought I wasn't good enough, but they kept supporting me, telling me it's good, just do it, and I will tell you if it's good or bad. And I trusted them, and it came out great. And I think Decimate Christendom is a fucking great album because it's a really aggressive fucking album. I mean, a lot of those songs have an aggression to them. It's very similar to a Diabolical Conquest or something like that. And it was just a shame because it also came out at a time where death metal just was at an all-time low too. So it didn't get really the the response that it should have. Plus, as a band, it was just myself, Kyle, and what's his name? Joe Joe Lombard, who passed away. It was us three. We didn't even have a second guitar player around then because we couldn't find the right person, you know?
Yeah, was it like hard to like sing
yeah,
at the same time?
It was extra hard because I just learned how to do vocals.
Yeah,
and then I have to play guitar and sing.
You have to like figure out where your hand is per note.
It's not easy to do for sure, you know?
Yeah, and then going into Primordial Domination, that was a good album, but I know it was also, so you wouldn't have another album out for 6 years. So, what was the reason like between the long gap between that and to Vanquish and Vengeance?
Well, Primordial Domination, we were really happy with the album. It came out pretty much the way we wanted it to. But Kyle, after that, took a hiatus from the band. And then we decided, we didn't know if Kyle was actually going to come back to the band or not. So we ended up deciding to get together with some of the old guys from the Onward to Golgotha lineup to try to see if we can get maybe a couple shows with that or whatever. I didn't think we'd record anything, but I figured it might be a good time to just reconnect with those guys and maybe jam with them a little bit. But that fell apart, and then it wasn't until 2010 or 2009 when Kyle came back into the band because we had a show and we needed a drummer. We said, well, why don't you come and jam, Kyle, for the show. And once he played the show, he got back into it, and we were at practice for that show, and all of a sudden, the ideas started coming to me, it was just like that magic was there once Kyle was there. So basically, it wasn't like we took a hiatus, we were still doing stuff, but writing-wise, we weren't going to write music unless we were inspired.
Yeah, can't phone it in or half-ass it.
Yeah, we weren't going to phone it in, and it was like, there just wasn't, I wasn't inspired to do it, and it was like, you want to give people honesty, and like I said, once Kyle got back in the band, it started falling together. The first one we wrote was Profound Loathing, that was on Vanquish and Vengeance, and it was like everything after that just fell together fucking perfect. And the chemistry that we had between myself, Alex Brooks, Chuck Sherwood, and Kyle was just great. And also during that time, I was also filling in for Agoraphobia, or I was playing with Agoraphobia, I guess, for about 6 months or something, where I was really happy to do that because I needed a break from running the fucking band and being in charge of it. I wanted a band where I just liked the music and just play the music and have fun doing it, and that was a good escape for me as well, Plus, we were also doing a lot of stuff with Funerus that time. We were working on the Reduced to Sludge album at that time, too. So there was a lot going on. It's just that Incan had to wait until we were focused,
Yeah, I know you played with like Furnace, Incantation. I know you played with Morticia for a little bit. Is there like a different mind frame depending on the project, or there's like a method of madness that applies to everything?
Well, there's certain things that stick with me no matter what I do, but when I play with other bands, I realize I need to step back sometimes, and I like the fact that you step back on time because that's, not every band I don't want to be the main guy that's focused and putting things together and blah blah blah. I purposely did these other projects because I wanted to just come in and just do my part, maybe add a little flavor here and there to stuff, but I didn't want it to be like, I didn't want to have all these other bands be my serious band. Incan was still always going to be my serious band. The other ones were just going to be the fun, just hang out, play some fucking metal with friends, and have a good time.
Yeah, and then going back to Vanquish and Vengeance, and another anniversary, it's 10 years old this year. I think that came out during like my senior year of high school. Was that like, did you feel like comfortable like that, especially going into the next three albums, Dirges of Elysium, Profane Nexus, and the latest album, Sect of Wild Divinities?
I'm sorry, I just need to check make sure we're not doing sound check. Yeah, I think that I can't talk, that whole time between when Kyle got back in 2010 and really Profane Nexus, that whole section is one big chunk of writing music. I mean, when we did Vanquish and Vengeance, we had a lot of extra material because we were just so inspired. And then we used some of that material on Dirges of Elysium, but also we wrote a bunch of new stuff. So we took some of the new stuff, some of the old stuff, turned it into Dirges of Elysium. But then we had about 8 extra songs. So we took those 8 and we brought them over to Profane Nexus, and we wrote more songs on top of it. And then we used some of the old songs, some of the new songs. So all those albums are kind of like ancestral in some aspect, because they're all written together. Like, and even I can't remember on that Sect. I think is mostly newer ones. Oh, there was a few that were on that one were still from that time. Like, basically, stuff like we'll say some of the stuff on Dirges was about 3 years old before that album came out. Some of it was brand new. Some of the songs on Profane Nexus was like 8 years old. Some of it was 3 years old. Some of it was brand new. And then even on the Sect of All Divinities, some of those songs were back from Vanquish and Vengeance. Some of the songs were from Dirges. Some parts were from Profane, and then a whole bunch. Most of it was new, but because some of the songs like we would have had from Vanquish that we didn't put on the album, and we hold it aside and we keep trying to bring it out. Do we feel it? We don't feel it yet. Try it again. We don't feel it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden on Sect of All Divinity, it was like, oh, it fucking works.
Yeah.
Like it's a weird thing, but all these things that make songs good, you can't force it to happen. You just fucking do it. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know it's been 2 years since Sect of All Divinities. Can we expect some new music coming soon? Have you all started writing the next album?
Yeah, we're almost done with a brand new album of material. This is our first album, I think, that we wrote everything new. Like, we finally got rid of all the old stuff from that, say, the 2010 to 2020 era songs. These are all 2000 to 2000. Well, the first one was written in 2019. So everything's from 2019, 2022, early 21 on the brand new album. And and we just heard some mixes of that, and I'm really fucking happy with it. It sounds heavy as fuck, which is perfect. And but we also have that was a Tricentennial in Blasphemy, I think.
Which is the new compilation.
Yeah, which those are some of the songs that we also didn't use from that era of 2010 to 2020 that we put on there, because we had the song Pest Savagery and the second song, I can't think of what it was called.
Do you ever worry that the best song you ever scrap will end up as a B-side, and it'll just be the biggest hit you ever have?
Well, it happened. What was Obelisk Reflections we did for our 25th anniversary release, and it ended up being a really, really killer song. But it was on the 25th year anniversary CD, but we put it on the Tricentennial release. We put that song in Nefarious Warriors on there because we wanted those songs to get a little more exposure and stuff. But yeah, Obelisk Reflections to me is one of my favorites of the, I call 2010 to 2020 a little more modern era of our band, kind of resurgence on. That's really one of my favorite songs, and yeah, it was on a rare album, but it's just the way it goes. And we actually have a 7-inch coming out pretty soon that we're doing that I didn't really announce yet, but I don't give a fuck. It's a split we're doing with our friends from the European grindcore band Blood, and one of the songs on it, it really fucking came out great. And it was one of the songs that we were going to put on the new album, but we said, fuck it, we'll take it off and put it on the 7-inch. So I don't know. It may be that extra song is going to be our best song off the new album. It's going to be on a 7-inch.
Awesome. So before we go, I just want to thank you for this interview, buddy. It's just,
thank you.
You mentioned you're working on new music. It's just anything else with Incantation. Shouldn't you like to plug in new tours or any of that good stuff?
Oh yeah, we're doing the Goat Horror Tour now, which is great. It will be Witcher and Caveman Cult, which is really psyched about it. Played the first show yesterday. It was great, worked out great. We have Suffocation. We're doing Suffocation and us in South America. We have another tour in Europe coming that we can't announce yet, and we have some other cool plans for 2023. A couple cool fest appearances, and we're talking about it. We hope we can make it happen. We want to do a really cool incantation set of classic material. Hopefully, something kind of that works with the 30th year anniversary release. A bunch of like either rare songs or maybe some of our early like demo versions of songs. So it's something kind of cool. So we have a lot going on.
Yeah, so awesome. Everybody, John from Incantation. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for the interview.